Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska show. I'm your host, John Quick. And for those of you that already watched this morning, you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I've already seen the show once. Yes, we're having a double header today. And I just want to thank folks for tuning in earlier today. If you didn't tune in earlier, you're going to want to go check that out. I had Ivan Moron, who has been doing surveys and polls in Alaska for the last 30 years. Definitely a very interesting podcast. And I think it's important to note that even though Ivan and I may not be politically on the same side, we had a great conversation nevertheless, which I think is missing in today's political world. Oftentimes, the folks on either side of the aisle don't like to talk to each other. And today was a great record and shows that you can talk to somebody on the other side without screaming at their face. So thanks, Ivan, again for coming on the Must Read Alaska show. I do appreciate it. And without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Newcomb, who is the headmaster of Holy Rosary Academy in Anchorage. And one of the cool things that I want to brag out the gate, which I'm sure the good doctor will tell us as well, but they just got recognized as the #1 private school in Alaska, which is very, very exciting. It's awesome to have a school of faith, a school that stands for Christian values, be that #1 slot, which is awesome. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Newcomb to the Must Read Alaska show.
Thank you so much, John, for that really gracious introduction. But yes, we are very excited to take that accolade 2 years in a row now.
Wow. So 2 years in a row. So for folks that have not heard of you, I bet there's going to be several parents maybe that are listening to this that maybe just moved to Anchorage or they've had their kids only in public schools in Anchorage. Please tell us about, go way back as far as you want. How did Holy Rosary Academy start? And then what brought you to becoming the headmaster of Holy Rosary?
Okay, very good. Well, it's a really interesting story. So the wonderful thing about Holy Rosary Academy is its roots are Alaska's roots. Its roots are Anchorage's roots. So going way back into 1987, the group of families in the area, they wanted a Catholic education for their students. At that time, the Archdiocese really didn't have any schools. And they just really wanted to make something work. So typical Alaska fashion, hard scrabble. They didn't have it. They said, by goodness, we will make it. So it got started. And some of the early families involved with the school were the Hickle family, actually. And it's kind of an interesting thing. When I first got to Anchorage, I read Wally Hickle's book, Who Owns America? And learned a little bit about the Hickle family and the background there. It was very interesting. But I think it was the generation that followed the original Hickles that came to Alaska were involved with founding the school, and God love them for that. So the idea of becoming a classical school, I think, came sometime later. I think it was 8 or 10 years into the school's history when they decided, look, let's just make this a classical school while we're at it. And what this means for us is, the ancient Greeks and Romans did not start with information. Today, everything is just sort of sticking information at a child and saying, if like Velcro, those things stick to the brain. And the kid, unfortunately, is reduced to a brain in that, right? So for the ancient Greeks and Romans, you don't start with information. You start with questions of character, and you talk about questions of society, right? So the questions are, what are the choices that will make me truly happy? What are the things I could do that will lend to my flourishing and those of everybody around me? So that's where things start. And the idea there is, if your character is solid, you can bear a lot of information. But if you've got really bad character, having a lot of information just means you can be really awful to a great number of people, right? So there's a societal component in classical education where we really want to make sure that we are educating the whole person in a way that conduces both of their development in their brain, their mind, and also in their heart and their character. So those are fundamental things for Holy Rosary, and it's why our motto is that we're a place where faith and reason meet in the pursuit of excellence, and we mean all of that. And so, yeah, that's the heart of what we are, and goes back for a long time in the roots of the school. And we're just blessed to have so many wonderful families be a part of this mission. It's just a beautiful little place of, as I like to say, faith, learning, and laughter.
That's awesome. So what brought you to Holy Rosary Academy? Um, I'm sure there's a story behind there, and we'd love to hear
There is a story. Let me see how much of it I can tell on air. So no, I'm teasing. But there are several parts of this. So for me, this has been a very interesting journey. I spent 6 years in Houston, Texas. I was the headmaster of St. Teresa Catholic School there. That school was sixth in the nation for performance on the Classical Learning Test 8. We did a lot of great things there over the course of my time. And so at the end of about 6 years, I had done most of what I could do for it within the compass of its resources. And I thought, okay, we'll see now kind of where we go. Well, I had a friend that sent me the ad here for Holy Rosary. I'm a Virginia boy. I lived most of my life in the South, and I was not so sure about this climate and coming up, but it was a very curious thing. Several things just kept drawing me back to this. So I had 2 or 3 friends that sent me the job ad, and I put my stuff in. And it was fascinating. Within 24 hours of sending in my materials, I had a phone call from Sam Wolf, who's the chair of the board.
Nice.
Marvelous conversation. Like, I get a phone call from Anchorage, Alaska. I knew it could only be related to one thing, right? So I had a marvelous conversation with Sam Wolf. And part of that whole discussion was the particular needs that the community had, that the school had. And the more we talked, the more I think I realized that the Lord had given me a set of gifts and experiences that could be put in the service of a very noble cause here at Holy Rosary. So looking on what was needed, I've always had a big thing that I want to go where the Lord calls me to be in terms of service. This seemed like a really excellent fit. And so far it really has been, which is great.
That's awesome. So how important to you is, faith in a kid's education? I mean, obviously this is what you do for a living, but parents have a choice. They can go to public school, or they can go to a private school, oftentimes Christian or a Catholic school. How important is it, do you think, a kid learns about, or a teen or a young adult learns about faith as they're learning about math or science or these other scholars? And I think it's very important, but I'd love to hear your take.
Sure. No, I think it's absolutely essential. And one of the very strange things about kind of a government school proposition these days, right, is that we have to bracket out any conversation about the ultimate origin of anything. There are just certain things you can't talk about. There's certain things you can't ask about. And so that's really not an education. To the extent that you can't question things down to the very roots or origins, something's wrong, right? This would be a great deal like speaking about mathematics, but saying we couldn't really say anything about addition or subtraction. We could only talk about multiplication forward, right? It would strike us as very odd, very partial, very strange. We talk about the automobile, right? But not the engine, everything but the engine, right? It'd be a very strange notion. We're just going to bracket out, right, the source of things and then talk about the rest of it. So I think those are critical things for a child to be able to question. And of course, if you've got children, there's the ever-present why in everything, right? Yes, but why? Yes, but why? Yes, but why? And most parents get back to this because God made it that way, right? There's a certain givenness in things. Science and math are great. And on their own, in a secular setting, they're very good at helping us account for what is here. They're not terribly good for helping us account for why there's something here rather than nothing, right? Ultimately, philosophically, nothing comes from nothing. So if that were really the case on a cosmic scale, we wouldn't be here to ask questions at all. So I think just at a kind of an ontological level, it's very important. But it's also hugely important just for a child's own development. A child that develops a relationship with God in prayer and reflection has a way to ask himself daily, am I the best me I can be? Am I being the best son, the best brother, the best whatever I can be with my family, with my parents? When you've got that relationship with God, you've got an outside other that you can really be in dialogue with about whether or not you're on the right path. So I think that's hugely important. So there's a very interesting way in which character development and faith development and intellectual development march forward together. But a lot of that starts with an idea that I have to have a fundamental posture of gratitude, that I have gifts that I did not give myself. I have abilities that I did not give myself. And those have to be refined and then brought back into service of my fellow man to really be the gifts they ought to be. That's the reason they were given to us. And so this environment in particular, we're constantly focused on what are your gifts? How do you develop those? And how do you bring those back to service of God and man? That's
awesome. So you have an event coming up, and like most private schools, fundraising is a part of kind of the ethos of what you all do, because you're not getting big grants from the state or from the feds. like public schools are getting to fund teachers
yet.
and administrators. And so tell us about this fundraiser. And if folks are in Anchorage and they want to come, how do they hear more about it? But first tell us about, 30th annual, that's kind of a big deal. So tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. Our 30th annual auction, a gala auction night, just a wonderful thing. Our theme this time around is In Fair Verona. It'll be just a lovely, lovely evening. And so come out and see us. And if you want to be on the Capulet side or the Montague side, come and join us. So what kind of nice Shakespeare kind of inspiration there for our event this time. That's the reason we decided to kind of do it upright. But yes, 30 years the school's been in existence, and you're right, fundraising is absolutely essential for a school of our kind, and even more so to the extent that we really work to make this experience affordable for families. But we don't have the underwriting of a parish even. We're an independent school, so we're not attached to a local a parish or church of any sort. So that fundraising is really critical to us. In most schools of our kind, tuition covers about 70 to 75% of our expenses. It costs us more to educate children than we charge. So that other 20 to 25%, we're working very hard to raise by other means and to make this amazing education available to an ever-growing number of families and students. So those are some of the dynamics that we have going. But the auction gala, if you want to know more about that, you can check out our webpage at hraak.com. Anytime you want to look at that, or .org, either one will work. But it is going to be on the evening of Saturday, October 15th. And there's a link there on our website where you can get tickets or come out if you'd like to come and be a part of that. And you can't afford a ticket, talk to me. I know some people. I might be able to make some arrangements. So,
and it's at the Marriott?
Yes, it is. It's at the Marriott downtown in Anchorage.
Nice.
And
so,
I happen to have had a moment this week where I got to have an advanced sample of food. You will be
pretty good.
So exactly, that's right.
That's awesome. So tell us, let's switch gears a little bit here. We're going to do a book giveaway, and we'll put this in the copy for the when we post the podcast to all the channels, iTunes, Spotify, and all that kind of stuff. So the good doctor here has written a book, and so we're going to do a book giveaway. He's going to sign it, and Must Read Alaska is going to be giving it away to somebody. And all you have to do is like, comment, or share, or tag a friend in any of the posts that you see on this episode, and you'll be entered to win. So, you could like, comment, and share, and that's 3 entries. Like, comment, share, and tag a friend, that's 4 entries, and you'll be entered to win. And we'll pick a winner probably Friday afternoon, and we'll send you off the book. And so we'll get it to you somehow. We've done this a number of times, and we've been able to successfully get the book to folks. So, Doctor, tell us about this book. My guess is it had to do with you going to school and learning about some awesome medieval stuff. So tell us a little bit about your book.
The whole process of my doctoral research was just a whirlwind of wonder in a lot of ways. I had the great fortune of studying with some real greats, Jeffrey Wainwright at Duke Divinity, and Avery Dulles at Fordham University in the Bronx. I was a graduate student there. A lot of my work focused ultimately on church history. So my field of specialization is English Reformation. I studied a lot of the bishops during that process in which Henry VIII is turning the Anglican Church, making the Anglican Church Anglican and breaking away from the Catholic Church. So it's a very funny thing. One of my jokes is I spent some time in the research, and there's a curious story about one of the figures I study. And so the 2 big people in the book that I study are Edmund Bonner. He was a Catholic bishop of London, and Nicholas Ridley. He was the Protestant bishop of London, and they kind of took turns in the diocese. So Bonner starts off under Henry VIII, and then when Henry VIII dies, his son comes into power, Edward VI. So Ridley comes in as bishop, and he changes everything. He actually rips altars out of London churches. And then when Edward VI dies, Mary comes to the throne, and Bonner comes out of prison and resumes his bishopric in London again. So interesting thing. But the neat thing about Bonner is he's buried in a secret service at midnight. He dies in prison under Elizabeth. And his body was believed to have been buried right there in the churchyard, right outside of the prison, the Marshalsea prison. Well, in 1803, his coffin turns up on the north side of the altar in a church way up in Colchester, right, a long way from London. And so one of the things I pieced together working with local historians in my research trip there was who very likely helped to relocate that body. So very interesting. Bonner had an assistant late in his active time before being sent to prison, and that fellow was actually the vicar of that parish for some time. So very likely the person that relocated the coffin. So my running joke is I've spent most of my life chasing dead bishops to find some of them are still on the move. So you just never know.
That's hilarious. So
Right.
what is your book title? What's the title of your book?
The book is Edmund Bonner, Nicholas Ridley, and the Poor Men's Chest. And it really is a lot to do with the way people in the 16th century looked at scripture and they looked at the church. So very interesting thing. And one of the big questions in that period is, you've got the whole Renaissance and the whole period of people learning more about the early languages that the Bible was written in. And one of the big questions is, what role does Renaissance humanism play in the beginning of Protestantism, right? And this book attempts to answer that question. And the bottom line on that really comes down to, if you're a humanist that follows Erasmus, you're much more likely to become Protestant. If you're a humanist that has followed the Italians, you're much more likely to stay Catholic in this period. So it's a very interesting read, but I do some very close work looking at some of the early Reformation writers and some of the early Renaissance writers in England. It's a really, really kind of intriguing read. So there's a glossary and all kinds of little bios of key players in the period. So it's meant to be really accessible to non-specialists as well.
Nice. So folks, if you want to learn all about the Christian humanism in the 15th century, 16th century?
That's right.
16th century, we're going to be giving away a book. So like, comment, share, take a friend, and we're going to be giving away a book. Even if you don't have interest, sounds like a freaking sometimes comical read of vicars changing around coffins. I mean, you got to get the... You got to have some humor in Christianity to
That's right.
Sometimes. So, Doctor, any last words about the Holy Rosary Academy or the gala coming up before we sign off here?
Well, I think I would say to anybody, if you'd like to know more about the school, look up our webpage, come by, schedule time to come and visit. We would love to tell you more about the deep work we do here in bringing faith and reason alive for all of our children here, and the great care that we give them. It's a beautiful place. We have a really remarkable faculty that do an incredible job at cultivating the very best in our students. So we're excited about that. One of the big things that we put in place last year, we're very excited about, is our new kind of behavior code for kids. It's called the Knights Code. It's based on 12 virtues that the 13th century Duke of Burgundy placed together as part of the Code of Chivalry. It's been a big hit with our students. So if you'd like to know more about the Knight family, come out and see us. We'll tell you about the Knights Code. We'll tell you about faith and reason. We'll tell you about this beautiful place of classical learning and Catholic faith.
That's awesome. So one last question, because I forgot to ask it, and it was bolded in my notes here. Let's say you have a family that's listening who's like, I want to have my kids go into this school. Do you have room still? How does somebody, go about potentially bringing their kids to your school?
Absolutely. So we've got a little questionnaire out there that starts the thing on lunch. So one of the first questions we'll ask you is like, what appeals to you about our kind of combination of faith and classical learning here? You'll do that, and that's the first entry point. I've got seats in most grade levels. Fourth grade for this year has been the hot grade, the it grade. So not so many seats for grade 4 for whatever reason. Every year one grade level is like super hot. But in other areas, if you're interested, come by and see us. We'll talk and we'll see where the conversation goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us. And for folks that are listening here, remember their 30th anniversary gala is coming up here on October 15th at 5:30 at the Marriott in Anchorage. You can check out their stuff on their website, which is hraak.org or .com. And until next time, I'm John from somewhere in Alaska. And you won't want to miss tomorrow. We have Les Garrow coming on. And, it's always good to hear from the other side, directly from the other side. And that's what we're trying to do here at Must Read Alaska, is not just show you folks from the Republican side, but also show you folks from the Democrat side. So hope to see you all tomorrow, and have yourself an awesome night. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate the time.
Yep.